rights. National Conservatism.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you all look very nice people, and I'm sure you are fantastically nice people, but I would like to draw your attention to a few characteristics of fascism. Just because you
get off the stage. Get on it.
Well, there we go. Our jolly good fellow has had to leave, but we believe in freedom of speech. So he can have his National Conference next week, and he can see how many people he gets to come along.
So, welcome to the most dangerous street in Britain. Yes, indeed, we're at our favourite place, Tufton Street. Huzzah! And if we look over there, we can see 55 Tufton Street, which is, as we know, the home to all of our favourite AstroTurf groups, including Global Warming Policy Foundation, commonly known as Net Zero Watch, Civitas, Taxpayers Alliance, New Culture Forum, Global Vision, Migration Watch. All of your favourites are in there. Except today, they're not. They've crossed the road to go into the Emmanuel Centre for the National Conservatism Conference. Yes, you heard that right. National Conservatism. Just give it a little Google. Anyway, we're here to keep an eye on things, as you can see here. And these eyes do swivel to the right sometimes. But yes, we are keeping... Oh, look, there they go. Aren't they dreamy? They're just dreamy. We've got banners against... So, National Conservatism. It's got the same amount of syllables as something else, hasn't it? I don't think that's an accident. Anyway, lots of things have been going on here today, and one of them was Silver Birch, who I'm going to interview now, interrupted Suella's speech. So tell us, what was that like? How long were you in there before you did it?
Unfortunately, I've been in there since 9 o'clock this morning, having to listen to the drivel that they've been spouting out. Lots of really not very nice people and lots of really not very nice opinions being spouted, but I had to bear with it to make sure we got the action off. Managed to have a lunch break, though, so it was only sort of 15 minutes after lunch.
What's your fascist sandwich like?
Well, I had obviously a vegan wrap from Pret, which was the best one we could get in short notice.
So then what did you do?
The action design was to disrupt the conference, effectively. So this morning we had colleagues who were disrupting Jacob Rees-Mogg, and myself and another colleague were disrupting Suella this afternoon. We prepared speeches, but it tended to be a little bit impromptu in the end, given that the experience of how little time you had to say what you wanted to say. I wanted to get the points really quickly. The main thing I wanted to get across is the policies that this conference is discussing and the policies the government is enacting are really a slippery slope towards the kind of policies which are coming out in the 1920s and the 1930s in certain parts of Europe, effectively fascism. So we wanted to make sure that everybody in the conference was aware of that risk, because some of the people in there will have good intentions, but just be a little bit naive or thick. So really wanted to sell them on the what the characteristics of fascism are. The other thing I was very keen to do was to do something in honour of a friend who's an asylum seeker from North Africa, who is precisely the type of person that Suella Braverman would want to put on a plane over to Rwanda. So I wanted to make sure that the human story was there as well, really. The plan was to read out a list of 14 characteristics of fascism, put together by a business person called Lawrence Britt. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance, so those went unsaid in the room, but have been expertly said outside. We had a bit of a chant earlier, which we just missed, and there's a placard somewhere around which has all of them on it. But for the sake of the live screen, the characteristics are a powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for the recognition of human rights, identification of enemies or scapegoats as a unifying cause, the supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, obsession with national security, religion and government are intertwined, corporate power is protected, labour power is suppressed, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, and fraudulent elections. Now, how many of those have we seen examples of over the the previous few years under the Tory government. Fraudulent elections mean they are gerrymandering the constituency boundaries, and only last week we saw people required for the first time ever to take ID to exercise their democratic right to vote. Unfortunately, I think it may have backfired on the Tories, because I think most of the people who didn't vote ID were the older people who would have voted Tory. Rampant cronyism and corruption. I mean, Boris is, of course, the exemplar of this. Very recently, Richard Sharp, the chairman of the BBC, had to step down for cronyism. Disdain for intellectuals and the arts during the run-up to Brexit. Michael Gove. We don't need experts anymore for some reason. It's an era now where they want to separate truth from belief. And if you believe something hard enough, that doesn't necessarily make it true. Corporate power is protected whilst labour power is suppressed. We have lots of colleagues in trade union movements at the moment who unfortunately are being forced to take industrial action. Laws are being passed at the moment which are trying to curtail their rights to take industrial action, such as minimum service within the NHS. They say it's to protect the patients, but in reality, it's to clamp down on the industrial action. It would be nice if patients had a minimal service in the NHS all of the time, unfortunately, because it's not fully funded. It isn't. Religion and government intertwine, not overly an issue in the UK at the moment, but we've recently had ministers like Jacob Rees-Mogg who have done their best to bring in a sort of very right-wing Christian ethos within government. Rampant sexism. We're in London at the moment. Quite recently, the Metropolitan Police was found to be institutionally sexist, institutionally misogynistic, institutionally homophobic, institutionally transphobic, in addition to being institutionally racist. The country isn't in a very good state at the moment. Add to that, on the sexism line, we have a growing gender pay gap, and women not being able to fully walk the streets of the country feeling safe. Identification of enemies and scapegoats is a unifying cause. This is the most obvious one to talk as an activist. I talked in the conference about the way they're trying to use the migrant population, some of the hardest done by, most disadvantaged people on the globe. They're not the enemy. They're human beings who deserve our support. And the UK's had a proud history of offering such support, but not under this government. We want to break the law to keep them out of the country. But also activists. We saw people arrested over the coronation weekend.
Just hold on, because we're waiting for Suella to come out, and we feel this might be it. Come along this way. Yep, Miranda, that's the person. Okay. Keep going.
So we're waiting for Suella. We think she's going to come out any minute. We're going to try and challenge her again, basically. It's a bit tense. That's a security car. Yeah.
It's a bit louder.
Got Steve Bray here.
I must say I'm a bit guilty, because defining conservatism is undoubtedly a challenge.
What is the next line of that? If you vote for you unless you come on the vote, unless you are brown.
Look at the sign up there. Look at the sign up there. John 10:10. What is the next line of that? If you vote for you unless you come on the vote, unless you are brown.
My name's Sue Hampton. I'm here because fascism is has an acceptable face, and it's the face of government. But there are 14 characteristics of fascism that have been identified, and I'm holding them here. And I went through them, and I could tick 12 out of 14. This is where we are in the UK at the moment, where we have the suppression of the right to protest, where we have a government that is talking about leaving the European Commission for Human Rights, where we have climate protesters being given sentences that are longer than many that are given for rapists, where we have a government that was criticised in 2016 by the UN for systematic violation of the rights of the sick and disabled. These characteristics of fascism are easy to identify in the actions of this government. We have a billionaire press, which is actually controlling the mass media by dictating the narrative that we see on our TV screens. We have these billionaires who meet with government on a regular basis. We have labour power suppressed, where the right to strike is under threat, where public services are underfunded, and nurses who are simply asking for a living wage are accused of killing people. We have absolutely rampant cronyism and corruption. PPE contracts? Anyone? We must stop fascism now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Extinction live stream here with me, Marine, one of your hosts this afternoon. We are outside the National Conservatism Conference here in Westminster in London. You might think, what on earth is that? Well, let me tell you, it is quite a sinister and quite scary event that is happening right now, where really our fundamental values as free and forward-thinking people are being challenged. And it's a really scary thing. We just heard a speech that happened earlier just to explain what is at stake and what the policies are coming out of the people who are attending conferences like these with this kind of mindset, with these kinds of values and policies that are coming through that are really threatening our very way of existence, and not least of all are also perpetuating the climate and ecological emergency with the policies that are coming out of this. Really scary things are being discussed in here. Obviously, one of the main things is the rights of refugees to enter this country, and also really bizarre things that you wouldn't think would be discussed in 2023, but indeed the contraceptive bill is up for discussion as well. Interesting times. So we are here obviously to say this needs to be in the public eye. We need to be fascism raise its ugly head in times of economic crisis. We are in an economic crisis. We're in a cost of living crisis, and that is the perfect fertile ground for fascism to make its way into the consciousness of the people of this nation, and not in the least political leaders, journalists, thinkers who are all attending this conference behind me today. And it is extremely, extremely worrying, and something that all of us need to be looking at and need to be standing up against. Because we know that with fascism, it can seep through into our society and into our culture, often without us realizing it. And we need to be paying attention. We need to stop it before it's too late. So we've been talking to people, you've seen the interviews. We're just waiting for some people who are going to start coming out of which one of the attendees here today, earlier by one of our rebels, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, who is at the forefront of this kind of, well, let's say, quite sinister thinking. So yeah, we're out here. So we're at the front entrance here. We've also got a crew who've seen earlier at the back as well, just in case they decide to sneak out the back, because obviously we don't want to miss old Suella leaving the building this afternoon. Now, for those of you who aren't sure about why are we talking about fascism, we're a climate movement, why are we here, why are we getting involved in this debate? It is all interlinked. The suppression and the extraction of nature, of people, of humans, human rights violations. There is, in fact, 14, I believe, intrinsic signs of fascism. And we've spoken to people around here where we can already tick the boxes for pretty much all of those symptoms, which is extremely worrying that we are already now in 2023, this day and age, with you and I standing here watching this, and still this is happening. So it is really, really time for us to stand up, make our voices heard, saying this kind of conference is extremely worrying. It might seem small, might not seem like a big deal to you, but this is huge and extremely, extremely concerning. So I don't know if we want to keep an eye on the door here behind me, people coming out. So as I say, there's all sorts here today. There's not just politicians, but there's also people from business, journalists, students, and as you can see, we're here with making sure that people understand that we are keeping an eye on them. We are aware. We might be small, we are small but mighty. There is a car just pulling up, so we're just going to see who that is for. Okay, let's cut to the other location there and see if we can see anybody sneaking out the back. We'll be back.
Okay, so here we are at the famous 55 Tufton Street, and I wanted to interview you two eyes who are keeping an eye on things. I mean, what sort of other things do you keep an eye on?
Well, we keep an eye on anything that causes us concern to make sure that people are doing absolutely the right thing to save this planet. So that includes going to look at various banks that continue to invest in fossil fuels. And it includes going to visit some of the big oil companies who are not making the right decisions. So these eyes are there and they keep a very close eye on what's happening. And today they're keeping a very close eye on things that seem to be moving to the right.
This is brilliant. Yeah, go on, move right to the right. Oh, yes. Fantastic. Well, not fantastic, but eyes are fantastic. It's good to let people know that we see them. We see what they're doing. We are the witnesses, right? They may think they're being very clever, but we see them and we want to tell the world that we see them. So that's why we're live streaming our eyes, because we're keeping an eye on these guys. And we're not the only ones, actually, because I think you'll find Steve Bray's here as well. And quite a lot of people, because weirdly, the people in Tufton Street, the people in that conference, not only are they the sort of core nucleus of climate deniers in the UK, they are also the people who engineered Brexit. And they are consolidating their power today, just as the Brexit bill is being binged. They're not happy, not one little bit of it. And whenever we say a small number of people can make a big change, there they are. They're in there. And so however you voted, I don't know how Brexit's working out for you, but these guys are the guys responsible. Well, not that one, apparently. So there we go. But yes, this is their home in Tufton Street. So they have really changed our lives. I don't know if you've got an export business or something like that, if how your life's going, but I heard reports from lots of people that it's difficult. It is difficult. So we are standing outside. We're with lots of other media. There's loads of boys coming out of school now as well. And we're all waiting for exciting things to happen. But really, the thing that we need to do more than anything is shine a light on the fact that this conference is happening and that you've got some of the most libertarian hardliners in the world there, and they're talking to each other. But the okay, so if you just joined, I'm on Britain's most dangerous street, Tufton Street. Okay, we're keeping an eye on the libertarians. We've got lots of boys coming out of school at the same time. They're probably used to news reports on this street, I would have thought. So we're at the back of the Emmanuel Centre. Front of it is the Home Office. We think Suella just popped back into the office out the front. Hopefully we got that on the other camera. Get us, we're so organised. But here we are at the back of Tufton Street. So this morning we've interrupted Jacob Rees-Mogg's speech. I say somebody interrupted from the rebellion. And then this afternoon, someone else, Silver Birch, interrupted Suella Braverman's speech. And why are we making these protests? Well, because we want to shine a light on what is actually going on here. So some of those people in there, in fact, if you go to nationalconservatism.com, you can see the range of speakers. You can see the people that are there. They range from politicians. Michael Gove will be there. Suella Braverman. I've forgotten that one. MP. Les Anderson. And Les Anderson's going to be there. So there are politicians. There are also quite a lot of press. People like Douglas Murray are there. There is a head teacher called Nina, who I noticed when I was reading up about this, she won Contrarian of the Year for 2019, which she was quite proud of that. I think she beat Theresa May to that one. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm coming out of shop because I didn't want to be mowed down by a bunch of adolescent boys, but looks like they're going round. What makes us think they're fascist? They are true libertarians. They do not want any rules at all. No rules to protect you, to protect your labour rights, to protect your food rights. In fact, in Tufton Street, they're so libertarian. They're very much involved. They're very much involved in creating the free ports. So Terence Mordaunt, yes, related to Penny Mordaunt, is one of the chairs of the Global Warming Policy Foundation. He is also part owner of the Freeport of Bristol. So it's very much in his interest, and he did put a lot of money towards Boris Johnson's campaign. What is the Global Warming Policy Foundation? So the Global Warming Policy Foundation was a charity set up in 2009 with the late Nigel Lawson. And what we have to remember is that in 2008, lots of people were starting to get very cottoned on to the fact that climate change was really big. Ecover was even on the cover of Time magazine. So the Global Warming Policy Foundation was created as a charity, I might add, a charity with very opaque funding to cast doubt on the climate science. They didn't have to prove it was wrong. They just had to make everybody doubt it. And a lot of emails were leaked just before the Copenhagen COP15 that kind of threw doubt on those climate scientists from the University of East Anglia. So if that doubt hadn't been there, chances are we might be a lot further down on an orderly transition rather than in this awful, desperate place now that we're in, where it's beyond urgent. Okay, I think there might be excitement at the other door. I'm so chuffed we've got both doors covered. Over to the other one.
So that was Anna over at Tufton Street. And we are at the Emmanuel Evangelical Church. I wonder if they know who they're hosting here today. It seems quite bizarre. We are at the National Conservatism Conference. And I'm now joined by Kathy Conn, the external coordinator of the Citizens Assembly Working Group with Extinction Rebellion. Hi, Kathy. How come you're here today?
How come I'm here today? Well, for lots of reasons. But one of the things that really struck me was when I was coming, there's one of the speakers was blaming the housing crisis on immigrants. It's as if they've forgotten about Margaret Thatcher selling off all the housing, council housing, in order to sort of gain Conservative voters. As if they've forgotten about Boris Johnson flying out to Malaysia to get investors to buy all the apartments that have been built all along the river that are empty, about all the people who own endless properties, profiteering, taking affordable housing out of the property market. And yeah, let's find a scapegoat. It's the usual story, isn't it? Breeding fear and division, and let's blame the immigrants. And this just reminds me, it just really gives me an absolute sense of horror, because it is this sort of building up of fear and resentment that built up the climate that we know happened in Germany not so many years ago, that one would have thought would never, ever, ever happen again. And here we are, really very much more than on the cusp, if you ask me. But, Conservatives, as well as anybody else's point of view, should be part of the discussion. Their voice should be part of the at the table, and that's one of the reasons why we want citizens' assemblies, where people, a diverse of people with different experiences and education and life experience and knowledge come together, and they have information. So they'd have information about immigration. They could discuss it, but they'd have the full story, not just the line that the National Conservatives have been presenting today. And that is really why we have to be, all of us, moving towards supporting real democracy instead of electoral politics, which only basically serves one team or the other fighting against each other.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, Kathy, that you bring up, obviously, when we speak of fascism, we immediately think of the Second World War. And I think a rhetoric that we've often been taught and have been brainwashed with, but that is the propaganda, isn't it? That our countries, the UK, my country, the Netherlands, that we were always against Germany from the very start, that we were always anti-fascist. But actually, that is very, very much not true. I've just come back from the Netherlands, where on the 5th of May, we have our Freedom Day, the day before we have our Remembrance Day. And now, 70 years later, after the war, there's more and more openness about the fact that at the beginning, and even throughout, there were a lot of Dutch people and people all over Europe who were indeed pro-fascism. And we didn't pay attention. The ordinary people, we didn't see it coming. And I feel like that is very much what we're looking at now, is that these things are happening, but we don't know about it.
Not only do we know about it, but really it's a fact that a lot of good people, it's not just not knowing about it. I think a lot of people do know about it, or certainly getting a hint of it. But
yeah, and it's important, I think there's often a lot of confusion why XR shows up at certain events like this. They're like, this isn't about the climate, but it is all connected, and very much like the climate, it's also creeping up on us, isn't it? Like, there are warnings, but I'm sure that we'll be told that we're being hysterical comparing what's happening behind us in this building to fascism. I'm sure there'll be some people saying that we're being hysterical and that this is not at all anything like it. But that's as well what we've been being told about the climate and ecological emergency, that we're just causing hysteria and we're just alarmist, and that this isn't really anything to worry about. But that is very, very much what the people were probably thinking back in 1939. They were like, oh, it won't be that much. And it's just we're seeing it now with all these bills coming in slowly but surely. This is becoming a reality.
We must all repent and break with God. The judgment of God is coming. Hallelujah! Messiah is coming. Glory to Jesus. Our only hope. Our only hope is Jesus. The King of Kings.
We're going to head on over to
the King of Kings
where we've got
is
Anna on the other
coming.
side of the building.
Hallelujah!
You're right.
Everyone get together.
Okay, so you're back at the other side, at the back entrance of the Emmanuel Centre in Tufton Street. Just to recap, so we are here for the National Conservatism Conference, which is 3 days. This is the first day. This morning, the keynote speaker was Jacob Rees-Mogg, and his speech was interrupted by a rebel. And this afternoon, it was Suella Braverman, and that was also interrupted by these two rebels here. So now I'm going to go to Miranda and say, how was it for you?
Yeah, it was quite scary, but I'm proud that I did it. I think she definitely needed disrupting. You know, what Suella Braverman is doing and what she represents is cruel, it's inhumane, it's disgusting. There's absolutely, no place for it in a caring, empathic community and country like we should be, like we want to create. And it felt morally the right thing to do. I think if you see something that is appalling and you don't stand up to it, then you're kind of complicit in a way. And that's why I was there.
Okay, thank you. And so, Birch, have you got any more words for us? I love your T-shirts, by the way. Well coordinated, people.
I didn't know what it was going to say on my T-shirt. I knew what size it was, so I was hoping it was going to be this one, and it turned out to be that. So I was lucky from the start. Yeah, I mean, it was a challenging day. I was in there since 9 o'clock, waiting until doing the action at 2 o'clock, so I got to listen to quite a few horrible opinions whilst I was in there.
Give us an example of the kind of things, because I'm really curious to know what is talked about.
There was a real strong vibe around the need to tackle an ageing population and the lack of people in the country. But the solution that seemed to be being put forward more than anything was a woman's place is in the home having babies, which isn't a very progressive thing to do. To be fair, there was a couple of sort of, what do they call themselves, a particular type of feminists who weren't agreeing with that. But the overall vibe was sort of a very sort of Victorian approach to society.
Yeah, it's interesting. If I was on Rebel Radio, I'd be playing There Is No Such Thing as the Good Old Days right now by Gogol Bordello, because it seems like quite a retro kind of imagining something that never actually really happened.
Absolutely. It's trying to go back to a fantasy world and idealised in the eyes of some people existence which doesn't fit the truth, doesn't fit modern reality.
Yeah, the sunlit uplands, of course, where they've taken us to. Here we are in the sunlit uplands with rampaging inflation, perhaps the worst performing economy, although I don't think GDP is a very good measure anyway. It's quite an interesting place, Miranda.
I mean, I think the thing that's also interesting is it is kind of retro, but the other thing that's very hidden is how much this is like an attempt to import some of kind of quite very reactionary politics from America that actually isn't as easy to sell here because we haven't got that kind of Christian fundamentalist hold in our society. And I think in many ways this conference was perhaps a kind of attempt to workshop and think through how you can get those ideas to take purchase here without that kind of very kind of prevalence of that kind of sort of right-wing Christianity.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg is quite a famous pro-lifer, is he not? So, I think it's quite interesting. I don't know, have you ever listened to John Ronson's podcast about the origins of the culture wars? And he tries to find the first pebble that started. So he finds the first pebble that started the sort of right-wing Christian thing in the States. And it's fairly recent, It's like it's not a long-held thing. So despite the fact that everything's retro, and of course, Jacob Rees-Mogg is kind of comedy retro, isn't he? In dressing deliberately, in dressing like Lord Snooty. I think the Beano wrote to him, didn't they, saying could they have their look back? But he does that to distract us because he doesn't look like a serious person, because he looks ridiculous, because he bats his eyelashes ridiculous. Then we're not to take him as a serious threat, but he is a very serious threat. And his use of social media is extraordinary.
Absolutely. I mean, I live in the parliamentary constituency adjacent to Jacob Rees-Mogg's, and you talk to the constituents there, the people who voted for him in quite big numbers, and they talk about how polite he is and how sort of effusive and welcoming he is. But it's all part of this doffing your cap to your betters mentality. And as things have been going on, it looks like Jacob Rees-Mogg may be moving from a very, very safe constituency to maybe losing it at the next general election, because people are seeing him for what he is, his failure to deliver. We've been held to account recently about the amount of pollution that goes into the rivers, and the fact he voted to allow that to happen unchecked when he had an opportunity to put something in place to block that. And we don't necessarily think that everyone in the country is going to like Extinction Rebellion, but issues such as the state of our rivers are unifying things that bring everybody together. That's what we're trying to do at the moment, build a much larger coalition across the movement of people who care about stuff like this, and say, come along and join us, not necessarily join the organisation, but join what we're doing, offer the support, and we can hopefully do better.
Yeah, because ultimately Extinction Rebellion is beyond politics, and actually what we're calling for is a citizens' assembly, so that we try and diffuse some of this binary kind of outlook, because there are things in there that we agree with, right? So something that we really agree with everybody in there is that things cannot go on as they are. Right? So something does need to change. However, how we do that, we really differ on that. So I think what we would like to do is have a proper citizens' assembly where all citizens are represented, and we can discuss some of these problems, because there is a problem with an ageing population. There's no way we can say that that's not true. We've all got to care for our silver tops, and how are we going to do that stuff? But the way to do it is to sit round and work things out in a proper, nuanced way, rather than this kind of binary trial by social media. And I think that what they're importing in there from America is some really, really complex, some really advanced social media binary skills. That's what they're doing, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that they are quite terrifying, because as climate breakdown approaches, we do kind of have two choices, without wanting to go into a binary myself, like, one, to come together, to cooperate, to try and find solutions, to try and have policies and activities that mitigate the harm and the damage to communities and to people. But what they want to do is, fortress Britain, put up the borders, stoke a culture war, stoke up hate and division, and essentially use all that as a smokescreen to keep the resources of the society held, and the power held within their kind of group of people who generally, operate the media business and the government as well. So, it's quite sinister, really.
Yeah, I think that I'd be very keen to invite the people in there to come to a climate fresque workshop. And then I'd like to see their reactions then, because I never know how much of this denial is conscious, how much of it is, just acted, or how much is kind of method. Do they really, really, really think that we're not at threat? If we look at the storms that were was it Storm Mocha last night in Myanmar and in Bangladesh? The evidence is everywhere. There have been floods in Congo. Just look on floodlist.com. Your list of latest floods will be there. It's not a question of, is this actually happening now? And the thing that I find most frustrating is that we were on the verge of sorting this all out in 2008. We just had the inconvenient truth. Everybody was into it. And then you have a financial collapse. Capitalism basically broke and was propped up, and that distracted us all from doing what we needed to do. And if we'd been working on decarbonising at the rate we should have been doing it at, we would be in a lot better place than we are now. And I think we've got to really, number 55 over there, Global Warming Policy Foundation, they are very, very culpable for that delay. And also Net Zero Watch, because they're doing it now. And whatever comes off Benny Pisa, who's their head of press there, who does all the MailChimps, thanks Benny for the emails, whatever he says, that appears on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, and particularly the Sunday Telegraph, who seem to have a very can-do attitude where Benny's concerned. So do not think that denial is over. It might have a new coat on. It might be looking a bit more like delay, but it is a thing of denial. And this concept of Net Zero Watch, that the common man cannot afford to transition to a zero carbon future is absolute nonsense. The people who are not interested in transitioning to a net zero future are people heavily invested in fossil fuels, and I would suspect Somerset Capital is definitely one of those. And if anybody doesn't know, Somerset Capital is Jacob Rees-Mogg's hedge fund. There we go.
Yeah.
So just so that you know.
Great. Yeah, we're going to wrap up here, I think, Anna.
Okay.
It's been really lovely doing this together, just like the old Rebel Radio days.
It definitely is.
Yeah, so thank you so much for watching the XR live stream while we've been reporting on this bizarre, as Miranda said, sinister, weird conference of national conservatism. I mean, it's just bizarre that this is even happening. So let's keep an eye on it. Do not look away. Keep an eye on it. We have to stand up for it because, as Kathy said as well, the worst thing good people can do is do nothing. And that's not what we need to be here. We need to be holding them to account.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Google it. National Conservatism. That name is chosen deliberately. Okay. That's not a casual name. And remember Tufton Street, any time that you happen to be passing, come and have a look. Yeah, Britain's most dangerous street. That is the building that forced Brexit on this country. Okay, so don't forget it. All right, thanks a lot for watching.
Bye.
There's no grease paint but bright lights. National Conservatism.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, you all look very nice people, and I'm sure you are fantastically nice people. But I would like to draw your attention to a few characteristics of fascism. Just because you...
Get off the stage. Gentlemen.
Well, there we go. Our jolly good fellow has had to leave, but we believe... So he can have his National Conference next week, and he can see how many people he gets to come along.
Because defining conservatism is undoubtedly a challenge.
What is the next line of that? If you vote for you unless you come on the vote, unless you are brown.
Look at the sign up there. Look at the sign up there. John 10:10. What is the next line of that? If you vote for you unless you come on the vote, unless you are brown.
It's happening now. An extinction event unfolding faster than when the dinosaurs went extinct. Climate breakdown is evident on every continent on Earth. Those in power are neither willing nor capable of acting on the crises. They lack the courage, conviction, and creativity to do what is required. Corruption is in plain sight. As our planet passes multiple tipping points and the UK sleepwalks into authoritarianism, what Extinction Rebellion does this year affects everything. So we're mobilising like never before for the greatest collective act of non-violent civil resistance in history. Because now is the moment to begin building a world where love, care and freedom are prioritised. We demand the end of the fossil economy. Now is the moment. Will you step up? We will not be bystanders. Will you?